What is up, Zelda and RPG fans? In this video, I'll be ranking all of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages. I will do one where I rank the Oracle Seasons dungeons, one where I rank both of them together, all that jazz. For the people who think they're just like basically one game, I'll do that one. And for the people who just want to watch this video, I'm doing this one too. So hope you enjoy. And I'll probably go a little bit more in depth in this one versus the joint one. So yeah. All right, so we are going to get right into this with the 10 dungeons that are in this game. So we're going to be doing each of the normal dungeons. So that will be what we consider the normal dungeon. So that's the Spirit's Grave, the Wing Dungeon, the Moonlit Grotto, the Skull Dungeon, the Crown Dungeon, Mermaid's Cave, Jabu-Jabu's Belly, Ancient Tomb, the Black Tower. Then we'll also be including the Oracle of Ages Hero Cave in this ranking. And then we will end it off with the Room of Rites, which I will be including in both videos. So yeah, let's get right into this with the Spirit's Grave, which is an okay starting dungeon. If you've ever joined me in a Zelda video in the past, you probably know that I'm not a big fan of pretty much any dungeon where the dungeon item is literally the power bracelet. I always find these to be not the greatest dungeons. It's just silly to me when that's literally the dungeon item. And I don't know. It always annoys me when we have the dungeon item as literally the power bracelet. So outside of that, we've got some okay bosses. We've got, one mini boss and one boss. So we've got the little ghost dude. Let me look. What was his name again? Like Giant Genie or something. Yeah, so the mini boss. It's just a ghost with some smaller ghosts. It's a cute little boss. Pretty decent little mini boss here. It's nothing too bad. Pretty fun. Now, there's also the dungeon boss, which is this pumpkin thing, which is awesome. Pumpkin head. He walks around the room trying to jump on Link, and it's nothing too special. You just slash at the body, lift the head, use the power bracelet, toss the head onto the ghost, and then boom. It's fun. It's a fun little fight. But otherwise, again, when you literally have at this point the power bracelet and like ember seeds or whatever they're called, flame seeds. Like this is literally the definition of a starting dungeon, the definition of a very mid dungeon. I mean, if you look at the map, it's like 10 screens. It's very tiny. Okay, maybe not 10. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21. But if you compare that to a lot of Zelda dungeons, that is just tiny. Anyway, this is an alright dungeon, but I'm going to, outside the atmosphere, and I do like the graveyard that it's in. It's one of the more charming Zelda graveyards, in my opinion. Actually, getting into the dungeon is probably more fun than the dungeon itself. And yeah, I think this is one of the worst starting dungeons of the series. As much as Oracle Ages is one of my all-time favorite Zelda games, think it's super underrated and stuff, I'm gonna admit that it has a pretty bad first dungeon. So I'm gonna throw this down in the D tier. I think it's a below average Zelda dungeon. Not the worst dungeon in the game, but not the greatest either. Yeah, I think D is fair. All right, next we move into the good old, these pictures are kind of dumb. These were just pictures taken off of Zelda dungeon. So I will tell you which is which. Just kind of ignore the pictures. That's for me to put it on there. Anyway, next is going to be, of course, Dungeon 2, and that is going to be the Wing Dungeon. And the Wing Dungeon has got some good stuff going for it. It has the dungeon item Rock's Feather, which is one of my favorite Zelda items in general. It's so good in this game. It's so good in Link's Awakening. And it's especially good in Oracle Seasons and the Minish Cap. And yeah, we've got some good stuff here. We have a good amount of fun Rock's Feather related stuff. We've got some cool 2D side-scroller platforming. We've got some fun like color puzzles that you will do by jumping over the puzzle blocks. And we've got a pretty actually labyrinthian dungeon here. Like, it's got a pretty good amount of screens, a pretty good amount of, and it has the signature fantastic Oracle Ages charm with its just emphasis on wacky puzzles, and that is one reason I love this game. The puzzles are always like pretty difficult and stuff and cool. And the dungeon boss is honestly one of my favorite dungeon bosses in the whole series. It's this like 2D side-scrolling thing. The head thwomp, it's kind of from freaking Mario, but it has 4 different colored faces, and they all do like different things, and you got to throw it into the red face. And it's just a really cool boss fight, really unique, and definitely a memorable boss fight. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the boss fight. I loved the color related puzzles, the rock feather puzzles, the 2D platforming. There's a decent amount of mine carts in this dungeon as well. And let's see, what is the mini boss? I don't recall what the mini boss is in this dungeon. Is there a mini boss in this dungeon? Am I going crazy? I'm probably going crazy. Is there a mini boss? Mini boss, where are you? I think it's in the colored room, right? Maybe it's more of just a puzzle mini boss. Maybe I'm just going crazy. Is it like a... You know what? I think I'm going crazy. Is there not a mini boss? Mini boss... Okay, this is not the most important thing ever, but this is kind of annoying me. I don't think there's a mini boss in this dungeon. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, but just... Oh, no, there is a mini boss. There's a mini boss. I'm stupid. Swoop. There it is. Sorry, y'all, I was looking for that. Okay, so the mini boss in this dungeon is just like a flying guy. You fly around and slash at your sword. So yeah, that's cool. It tests your rocks. I think this is just a fantastic dungeon. Great utilization of the rocks feather and stuff. And you know what? Even though it's one of the weaker dungeons of the game, I'm still going to give it, I'm going to throw it up. Actually, I need one more tier. My good old S+ tier, because this game has so many good dungeons. This game probably has my like 2 or 3 of my favorite Zelda dungeons. Same with Seasons. I just love this game. I'm more of a 2D Zelda guy, so yeah, I think this game's amazing. Anyway, Wing Dungeon, I'm going to throw up in the A tier. I love the Wing Dungeon. It's just perfect utilization of one of my favorite Zelda items. Fantastic boss, pretty decent mini boss, great 2D platforming, just so much good crap. I just freaking love this thing. Such a great dungeon. All right, next we move into the good old Moonlit Grotto, and it's a pretty decent dungeon. I do think it's a step down from the Wing Dungeon in virtually every way, but it is still a pretty solid dungeon. It's definitely, definitely. I do like that we get one of those 4-way spinny things. I always love those in the 2D games where there's 2 of them in this dungeon where you have to think about the rooms in a more like dynamic way. And the item in this dungeon is the seed shooter, which is one of the more unique dungeon items, and it is a huge upgrade over the seed slingshot in Oracle of Seasons. I think this one, the seed shooter, is just such a fun item to use. The freaking ricochet of it, and the fact that there's so many different like little puzzles that you can do with the seed shooter. That's fantastic. I do think the mini boss is a little bit more lacking. It just kind of like digs in the ground and then you like attack it after it comes back up. And the Shadow Hag boss is a pretty mid fight. It just like summons butterflies and you come and attack it. And you have to ricochet it. So I think that is kind of cool. You have to face toward the wall and then shoot the Shadow Hag so it hits from behind. So I think that's pretty cool. It's actually a pretty decent boss. But yeah, I think this is quite a little bit of a step down from the previous dungeon of the game. But the big reason for that mostly is I just love the Rocks Feather, but the Seed Shooter is honestly one of the most unique and awesome items in the series. I think that if this dungeon did a bit more with the Seed Shooter, I feel like you get it a little too late, and the dungeon focuses more on the spinny, rotaty 4-way rooms than the actual seed shooter. So, and I think that the comparing the mini boss and the boss, the previous dungeon, this is definitely the worst dungeon, but only by a smidgen. And it is on the island, which is one of my favorite parts of the game. Like things like that are a big part of why I like ages better than seasons, just because I feel like the locales are more interesting. But like anyway, Crescent Island is fun. That has nothing to do with this dungeon, but I just wanted to shout that out because that is an awesome part of Oracle Ages, and I just wish Oracle Seasons had more like just funny, silly, goofy places like that instead of just Subrosia. I feel like, yeah. Anyway. So where do I put it on the tier list? You know, as much as it is one of the weaker dungeons in the game, I'm yet again going to throw it up in the A tier. I think this is still a fantastic Zelda dungeon. All right, next we have got the freaking heck, what is it called? The fourth dungeon in this stupid game. It is, the Skull Dungeon. This is one of my favorite Zelda dungeons. I freaking love this place. So the item we get here is the Switch Hook, which is basically just an epic mix of the whip and the slingshot. Not slingshot, hookshot. Epic mix of the whip and the hookshot. And this dungeon's just crazy. It's all about mine carts, jumping around. It's like a high-speed dungeon. There's so many mine carts here, so much stuff going on. This is definitely like the one, other than the Black Tower, this is like the one combat-focused dungeon. And the Switch Hook is just such a fun item. And there's some crazy block puzzles in this one with Armo statues. Just so many great moments in this dungeon all around. It's intense. It's fast-paced. And again, it is one of my favorite dungeons in the series. Now, one of the problems with this dungeon are the weaker boss and mini boss fights. We've got this like floating eye thingamabobby majiggy, and yeah, it's not the greatest. It's kind of like the eyeball things in the original Zelda where they kind of just like float around and you have to hit the middle one with the hook and then attack it. And then the mini boss is just an Armos warrior, so you kind of just like jump around and attack it. So I mean, it's fine, but it's really just the fast-paced intensity of this dungeon. Tons of mine carts, shooting everything with the siege shooter, jumping around. It's just a great dungeon. It's interesting because typically I am a huge fan of the super like puzzle heavy like thought of evoking dungeons, but this is just fun, straight up fun, and it's shaped like a skull too, which is always nice. And yeah, it's a great dungeon, and it is just bonkers. It's super fun. Yeah, I think it is one of the more just like, I don't know, this is more of like a Link to the Past dungeon in a sense, where it's a lot more combat focused and just fast and all that stuff. So I really do like this dungeon. As a whole, it is one of my favorite dungeons in the game. Yeah, I'm going to throw it up in the S tier. Not quite S+, but in the S tier. So that's an awful picture that's not in the dungeon. Again, I just took random. I took the pictures that Zelda Dungeon used, which, let's be honest, were not great pictures. But yeah, that is the Skull Dungeon. All right, next we have got the Crown Dungeon, which this is a freaking weird dungeon. It goes completely different from the Skull Dungeon. It's completely puzzle-focused. And you're using is it called the Cane of Somaria in this game. I almost called it by the Minish Cap name. But this item allows you to just build blocks, and it is an awesome dungeon item. This is a very, very different dungeon from the last. It is super puzzle focused. It hurts your brain. You're like, what the frick is this? And the whole time it was just quite the dungeon, and I had a lot of fun with it. The dungeon boss also was very, very puzzle focused. It was very weird. It's more of just using this block to like detach him, and I thought the dungeon boss was awesome here. And yeah, this is a very puzzle focused dungeon in general. Like even the boss is just a puzzle. I will say the weak point of this, yeah, there's not too much combat in this dungeon. It's just really puzzle focused. So if you like yourself some Zelda combat, yeah, this is not the greatest dungeon. And also, it reuses the Link's Awakening mini-boss, the Smasher, and it's like the exact same. So that is a little unfortunate. But overall, the Crown Dungeon is a fantastic dungeon. Great puzzles, great all that stuff. But it just isn't as fun as some of the other ones to me. But I'm still going to throw it up in the S tier. Like, I freaking love this game's dungeon. So, Crown Dungeon up in the S tier. All right, next we have got the next dungeon in the game, which is the Mermaid's Cave. Okay, this one absolutely slaps. So, usually when you get okay, here's the thing. I always talk about how it's annoying when in a dungeon you get something like the what do you get in this dungeon? You don't get anything? Oh, I think you must get the Zora flippers like right before. Oh yeah. So you don't even, I don't think there's a dungeon item in this one. Yeah, so this is a weird dungeon. It just really is a completely unique Zelda dungeon. It feels like nothing else. Like it's whack. But this dungeon, yeah, you don't even get an item, which is crazy for Zelda. Like you don't get an item in this dungeon. So that's weird. Also, it is split into two different dungeons, and it is crazy because you've got the one in the past and the one in the present. So basically, you have to switch between the two dungeons, and it is a very unique dungeon for that. And yeah, it's not as long or as like intricate as some of the previous dungeons, but it is just super cool to be switching between the two. And you don't even get an item. The thing you get is the Zora flippers, which you get before the dungeon. But it's just so sick to be switching between the past and the present. And just it's just so awesome. It is an absolutely peak Zelda dungeon. You know what? I'm going to throw it straight up into the S+ tier. Like, literally switching. Wait. Did I miss something? Did I mess something up? Oh, this was the heroes. Oh, I see what's happening now. Okay, that was the heroes cave. I don't know why it went out of order, so that's annoying. But this is the... Okay, it doesn't really matter. These pictures suck anyway. But anyway, I am going to throw the the Mermaid's Cave up in the S+ tier. So yeah, currently we're leading with the Mermaid's Cave in S+. Then we have got the Skull Dungeon, Oh, these pictures are so bad. Sorry about that, y'all. So yeah, Mermaid's Cave in first place. In second place, at the top of S tier, we have got the Skull Dungeon, and then we have got the Moonlit Grotto. Then I'm going insane, y'all. I'm going crazy. Okay, I'm going to go from the bottom instead. In last place in the D tier is the Spirit's Grave. Pretty bad. Then we have got up here in the A tier, Moonlit Grotto. And then we have got the good old Wing Dungeon. Then here we have the Crown Dungeon. Oh yeah, the Crown Dungeon, the Skull Dungeon, and then the Mermaid's Cave in S+. Okay, sorry y'all, I'm throwing myself off. I should have picked better pictures. But anyway, moving into the next dungeon, after the impeccable Mermaid's Cave, where you're traveling from the past to the present, back and forth, we have got another fantastic dungeon, this time in the form of the Ancient Tomb. Nope, that's next. That is next. Next, we've got Jabu-Jabu's Belly. Jabu-Jabu's Belly is... This is definitely a mixed one. I see people throwing this like awful, say it's like the worst dungeon in the game, one of the worst in the series. And then I see people throwing it in number 1. And you know what? I'm definitely like that second one. Jabu-Jabu's Belly. Heck, I am actually going to move even another tier. I'm going to make another tier for favorite 2D Zelda dungeon. Yep, that is right. This is my favorite 2D Zelda dungeon tier. And I just love Jabu-Jabu's Belly. I understand why people don't like it. It is very reminiscent of like the water temple from Ocarina of Time. You have to be thinking in like 7D chess for this place, but oh my goodness, is it phenomenal. I had so much fun with this dungeon, and we get the long switch, which gives us even more insane, epic hook shot, chain hook, whatever action. There's just so much going on here. You have to keep raising, lowering the water levels. There's 3 floors. They're all enormous. I swear there's like 50 tiles or more in this place. There's a bunch of chests and keys, and it's so cool. You have to switch. You have to be thinking in so many things. And then the mini boss is literally a dungeon boss from Link's Awakening, yet it's harder. And that was one of my favorite dungeon bosses in the Switch version of Link's Awakening, at least. I liked the anglerfish a lot. I always loved the 2D, like, side scroller like bosses. I'd say the weakest part of this dungeon is the Plasmarine final dungeon boss, but otherwise this is my favorite 2D Zelda dungeon. I just love the water level changing. I love how intricate my brain was going. 7D chess, just thinking harder than I ever have thought before. Like this was like harder than the freaking ACT, y'all. Like this was thinking in like 7D. So yeah, I love this freaking place. It's just so good. So yeah, and yeah, I have nothing else to say. This is just my favorite 2D Zelda dungeon. All right, next we're moving into the Ancient Tomb, which is also another fantastic dungeon. And actually, I'm going to move the Crown Dungeon. Nope, no, I'm not going to move the Crown Dungeon. Never mind, we're good. Ancient Tomb, I'm going to throw it up in the S+ tier. Yes, I love this game's dungeons, if you can't tell. And the only one that isn't absolutely fantastic is the Spirit's Grave. As much as I think that did have a fun aesthetic and a fun build up to the dungeon. But yeah, Ancient Tomb is just absolutely a banger. And it is just so good. Low S+ tier. And what I love about the Ancient Tomb is when you enter, there is this middle place where you have to get these like 4 tablets to be able to go into the bottom of the dungeon. And this place has so many keys. It's really tests all your skills that you've got so far. It just really is. It's not quite as big as Jabu-Jabu's belly, but it's also an enormous dungeon. There's so much going on here. Not quite 7D chess, but like at least like 5D chess over here. The only thing that I would say is a letdown is the item. It's the Power Glove. So you get, no, not the Nintendo Power Glove that's in the Wizard movie. No, just the Power Glove, the upgrade to the original one. So it's just lame. But other than that, this is a fantastic dungeon. I love the idea that there's a centerpiece and we're trying to open these 4 open up these 4 things, and yeah, we get to the bottom of the dungeon. And the dungeon boss is awesome. It's kind of like Bongo Bongo from Ocarina of Time, kinda, but in 2D. But yeah, it's one of those hand bosses with the big head. But yeah, it actually has quite a few. It's like 3 different phases. Like, it's a good boss fight. One of the best boss fights in the game for sure. And yeah, there's lots of underwater segments, and it's just really a test of everything. And the Blue Stalfos mini boss is not too good, but it's also still pretty good. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic dungeon. Yet again, another one of my favorite 2D Zelda dungeons. Yeah, I think it's hilarious how few dungeons are going to be in any of these lower tiers for this game, but I just love the Oracle Ages dungeons. Like, this game probably is my favorite dungeon set in the series. I haven't played every game in the series. I'm still missing a couple of the 3D ones. I haven't played Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword yet, and I know those ones have like absolutely amazing dungeons. But of all the Zelda games I've played, Oracle Ages has my favorite dungeon set. So don't be too annoyed at my extreme praise for it. All right, and now we are moving actually into some of the ones that are a little bit worse. So yeah, that's unfortunate. We've got the Black Tower now, which from a standpoint in saying, what am I saying? From a narrative standpoint and stuff, this is an immense upgrade over the Onyx's Castle, like awful dungeon in Seasons. It's also a big upgrade from the Windfish in Awakening, and I think this is one of the better 2D Zelda final dungeons, which is kind of depressing to say. Way worse than the ones in Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. But like when you compare this to Link's Awakening and Oracle of Seasons, yeah, the Black Tower is pretty good. And what I love about the Black Tower is it's teased throughout the game beforehand, and it tests your skills in combat, which is pretty rare for Oracle Ages. So this one, yeah, it tests your combat skills. You climb up this tower. There's not that many puzzles, but you're just fighting lots of enemies back to back. And it's a dungeon that you had to visit at the beginning of the game in both the past and the present. So like it's kind of built up where something like Onyx's castle just kind of shows up out of nowhere. But yeah, I really do think that the Black Tower is still a good Zelda dungeon, and I am going to put it in the freaking B tier. I think that, yeah, just its presence throughout the game and its atmosphere and the final boss is amazing. Like I think the final boss of this game is better than the Ganon and Twin Rova fights. It's just so fun. One of my favorite final bosses of the series. And yeah, I mean, it's still, there's tough competition in this game. There's so many good dungeons that even the final dungeon getting a B tier. I mean, yeah, it's still really good though. Yeah, combat, test your combat. The atmosphere is great. The narrative influence it has is actually pretty decent for 2D Zelda dungeon. So yeah, not too bad. All right, next we're moving into the Hero's Cave, which is absolute dog S, and that is going to go in the F tier. The Hero's Cave in Oracle of Seasons is actually kind of fun, but the one in this game is literally just the worst thing ever. It's so much just block puzzles over and over again, and I'm talking like 50 push block puzzles. I'm not talking like I'm talking like 18 times harder than Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle block puzzles. Like this is just trash. And I like puzzles, but this is just, it's too much. And it's just the one thing you get from it is a one ring. It's just not a dungeon that I enjoyed. So, yep, we get one dungeon that is actually in the F tier, which is very rare for Zelda games. Like I don't usually even put Zelda 1 or Zelda 2 dungeons in the F tier, but this is definitely one of my least favorite dungeons in the series. Yes, sure, it's like a mini dungeon, but it's still trash. All right. I mean, like, I'll even take Jabu-Jabu's belly from Ocarina of Time over this, and that's saying something. All right, and finally we have the fantastic Room of Rites, which it's really not that fantastic, actually. I'm going to drop it in the C tier. I think that, yeah, ultimately, it's not as good of a climax as the Black Tower by any way of the word. The final bosses, the Ganon and Twin Rova fights are really good. Some of the best fights in the duology, but compared to the final boss of Oracle Ages, it just completely fails. It's still good. It's fun after you beat both games and you're like, oh yes, this is fantastic. We're fighting the final boss. I think one thing that just kind of makes it weaker though is that they had to make it so either if you're playing Oracle Ages or Seasons in the Link game that it works. So there's nothing like too unique about the fight to either of the games. So that is kind of sad. But I do really like the Twin Rova fight. The Ganon fight is definitely not my favorite final boss in the series, but yeah, it's pretty good. So overall, we've got a pretty stacked tier list here with a little gap here to show just how awful the Hero's Cave is. But yeah, I'll run back through them one more time. In F tier, we've got the Hero's Cave. In D tier, we have got the Spirit's Grave. That rhymed. That's awkward. The Room of Rites in C tier. It just kind of fails as a final dungeon, in my opinion. B, Black Tower. It isn't the greatest final dungeon, but its story, influence, and its amazing final boss gives it a B tier for me. And then at the bottom of A tier, we've got the Moonlit Grotto, which is a solid dungeon, but nothing way too special, but still above average 2D Zelda dungeon for me. And then we have got the which one is this? I'm blanking, y'all. Not the Crown Dungeon. We're not at the Crown Dungeon yet. Going crazy. Oh, the Wing Dungeon. Moonlit Grotto and the Wing Dungeon in A tier. Okay, you know what? I'm going to type these out. I want to type them out. So we have got the Hero's Cave. Just so you can see it better at the end. I feel bad for how awful those things were. So Spirit's Grave. Room of Rites. Black Tower. Then Moonlit Grotto and Wing Dungeon. Both good dungeons, but not too special. And then in the S tier, yeah, we've got Crown Dungeon as the higher. No, not as the higher one. Crown Dungeon and the good old Skull Dungeon. And the Skull Dungeon is the higher of the two. The Crown Dungeon is still bottom of S tier, though. And then, yeah, we have got the top of S plus tier, the Mermaid's Cave, and then the Ancient Tomb. And for my favorite 2D Zelda dungeon of all time, that is Jabu-Jabu's Belly. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Sorry again about the awful pictures, but hopefully my explanations were good. And hopefully I don't see too many Oracle of Ages rankings on the internet. And I just wanted to highlight one of my favorite dungeon lineups of the series. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to check out some of my other Zelda rankings. Since I didn't choose the pictures for the tier lists, those other tier lists are much better looking. But I will do a better job of making sure these look better for next video. But thank you all for watching. Have a fantastic day. Peace out, Zelda fans.